The wet asphalt reflected the headlights when Zika heard the sound. In the rearview mirror, his blood ran cold as he saw a bloodied Labrador being dragged by a rope, panting for his life. The cold driver treated him as if he were nothing. Paws scraped the asphalt, desperate moans echoing in the early morning. Zika trembled. He knew the dog wouldn't and #39 last another minute, but he didn't and #39. Yet know that this decision would change not only the animal and number 39's life, but his own forever. The roar of the diesel engine cut through the silence of BR 116. Zika adjusted his body in the truck seat, feeling the weight of 20 years of road travel on his aching back. At 3 in the morning, the light rain made the asphalt slippery and dangerous. A few more hours and he would arrive in Fortaleza with the load of medicine. It was the same old routine. The radio hissed softly. Country music mixed with static. Zika yawned, thinking of the bed that awaited him at the end of the trip. That and number 39's. When he heard a distinctive metallic scraping sound, he frowned and turned down the radio volume. The noise continued. He glanced in the side mirror and his heart sank. A speeding black Civic had something tied to its back. A rope. And at the end of that rope, what the hell is this? A yellow Labrador was being dragged across the wet asphalt. The animal and number 39's hind legs desperately tried to find purchase, but kept slipping on the sodden road. The dog lifted its head, trying to breathe, its eyes glazed with terror and pain. Zika slammed on the accelerator, getting closer. What he saw made his stomach churn. The Labrador and number 39's fur was raw on its back and paws. Blood mixed with the rainwater, leaving a red trail on the asphalt. The animal panted, its mouth open, its purple tongue lolling. With every meter dragged, more and more pieces of skin were peeling off. And the Civic and number 39's. Driver drove as if nothing were happening. Loud music, the window down, even smoking. A bald man in his 40s with an expression of complete indifference, as if dragging a live dog was the most normal thing in the world. Zika felt anger rise like hot lava in his throat. The son of a bitch muttered, his whitened knuckles pounding on the steering wheel. The Labrador tried once more to get up, but his hind legs wouldn't, and #39 obey. The animal looked back directly at Zika and number 39's truck, as if pleading for help. In those brown eyes, Zika saw something that hit him like a punch to the gut. Pure pleading. The dog was conscious, knew he was dying, and was begging for someone to save him. Zika accelerated, pulling up alongside the Civic, honked desperately, waved out the window, and shouted. The driver glared at him irritably, like someone bothered by a mosquito, and accelerated even more. The Labrador whined, a desperate, high-pitched sound that pierced Zika and number 39's soul like a blade. And quote, No, you and number 39, not going to kill that animal in front of me, you bastard. End quote. The trucker looked ahead. The road was empty. No other vehicle in sight. It was now or never. With 20 years of experience on the road, Zika knew exactly what to do. He slammed on the accelerator, overtook the Civic, and with a precise maneuver, threw the truck in front of the car, forcing the driver to brake suddenly. The Civic skidded on the wet road, spun 180 degrees, and stopped on the shoulder. The driver came out screaming, and quote, You crazy man, are you crazy? End quote. Zika jumped from the cab before the truck even came to a complete stop. His 90-kilogram frame advanced toward the man like a storm, but it wasn't #39, the attacker he looked at first. It was the Labrador. The animal lay on its side on the asphalt, breathing raggedly, trembling. Its hind legs were raw, blood spreading in a puddle around its body. But when Zika approached and knelt, the dog did the impossible, lift its head and try to wag its tail. End quote. Easy boy, easy, end quote. Zika whispered, his voice cracking, and slowly extended his hand. The Labrador, racked with pain, pressed its bloodied muzzle into Zika and number 39's palm. A gesture of absolute trust that made the truck driver feel something he hadn't and #39 felt in years. Purpose. And quote, Hey, get out of my dog and number 39's way, end quote, the attacker shouted, approaching. Zika stood up slowly, his muscles tense. 20 years of carrying heavy loads and dealing with all kinds of people on the road had shaped not only his body, but also his personality. When he turned to face the man, his voice was low and dangerous. End quote. Your dog, you were killing him, you son of a bitch. End quote. The bald man laughed. A cold, humorless laugh. End quote. A worthless dog deserves to die. That bastard killed 2 of my mother-in-law and number 39's chickens. End quote. Zika felt his blood boil. End quote. He killed 2 chickens, and that in number 39's. Why you were going to drag him to death? My problem. What do I do with my pet? It and number 39's, not your pet anymore. End quote. Zika took a step forward. End quote. Now it's in number 39's, mine. End quote. The man laughed louder. End quote. Yours. Are you stealing from me? I and number 39, saving it. If you want to do something, you can try. End quote. The 2 men stared at each other under the light rain. The attacker was smaller than Zika, but he had the coldness in his eyes of someone who had done worse things. Zika could sense it. This guy wasn't an #39, just cruel to animals. And quote, you, Don, and number 39, know who I am, end quote, the man said, his voice taking on a threatening tone. And quote, I have friends in the police force. I can make up anything. And you, Don, and number 39, know who I am? End quote. Zika retorted, stepping closer. End quote. 20 years on the road. I and number 39 faced thieves, drug dealers, all kinds of bastards. You, Don, and number 39, scare me, end quote. Behind them, the Labrador whined softly. Zika looked over his shoulder and saw the animal trying to crawl toward them. Even injured, it was still trying to protect the man who had saved it. The sight made something explode inside Zika. End quote. Look at this, end quote, he said, pointing at the dog. End quote. Even after what you did to him, you still have love in your heart, more than you ever will. End quote. The attacker spat on the ground. End quote. Shitty sentimentality is just a mutt. It and number 39's, not a living being that feels pain and fear that has the right to live. End quote. Zika brought his face closer to the man, something you seem to have forgotten a long time ago. Are you trying to lecture me? A lazy truck driver. A lazy one. Zika smiled, but there was no joy in it. End quote. At least I, Don, and number 39, torture animals for fun. End quote. The man tried to punch Zika, who dodged easily and caught the attacker and number 39's fist. With 20 years of carrying heavy loads, Zika and number 39's strength was frightening. The man groaned in pain. And quote, it hurts, dozen and #39. It, end quote, Zika whispered. End quote. Now imagine how the dog felt. End quote. He released the man and number 39's arm with a shove. The attacker staggered back, massaging his wrist. End quote. This ISN and #39 going to stay like this, end quote, he growled. End quote. No way, end quote. Zika agreed, taking his cell phone out of his pocket. End quote. Because I and number 39 going to film everything and post it online so everyone can see what kind of monster you are. End quote. The man and number 39's expression changed instantly. Cynicism gave way to panic. End quote. No, Don and number 39. Do that, man. I have a family and a job. I should have thought of that before. End quote. Zika started recording, pointing the camera at the man and then at the injured dog. End quote. This is Zika, the truck driver. End quote. It and number 39's 3 a.m. on BR16, and I just caught this monster dragging a live dog on the asphalt. Stop it. The man tried to cover his face. End quote. No, stop it. Everyone will know who you are, your name, where you live, where you work. You and number 39. LL. See if anyone wants to be friends with a guy who tortures animals. End quote. Desperation took over the attacker. End quote. Okay, okay. I and number 39 am sorry. It was just a momentary rage. I was drunk. Drunk? End quote. Zika stopped recording and stared at the man. End quote. So you were driving drunk and torturing an animal? End quote. It got better and better. Behind them, the Labrador tried to get up again. Zika put away his phone and ran to the animal. End quote. Calm down, boy Don. And number 39, try to get up. End quote. He took off his shirt, leaving only his tank top on, and carefully wrapped it around the dog and number 39's trembling body. The animal was in shock, but his eyes never left Zika and number 39's face. End quote. You need to go to the vet now. End quote. The man approached hesitantly. End quote. Look, I and number 39. LL. Pay for the vet, okay? We and number 39. LL. Forget about this. End quote. Zika looked at him as if he were an insect. End quote. You think it. And number 39's. A question of money. Then what do you want? End quote. Zika picked up the dog with extreme care. The animal weighed about 30 kilograms, but in its current state, it seemed weightless. The Labrador rested its head on Zika and number 39's chest and closed its eyes. End quote. I want you out of my sight before I change my mind about turning you in to the police. And the dog? The dog and number 39's. Going with me. End quote. Zika turned to the truck. End quote. And if I find out you did this to another animal, I and number 39. LL. Look for you myself. And then there. And number 39. LL. Be no discussion. End quote. The man tried to protest, but something in Zika and number 39's gaze silenced him. Without another word, he got back into the Civic and drove off, leaving only bloodstains on the asphalt as proof of what had happened. Zika carried the Labrador to the truck and number 39's cabin and carefully placed the animal in the passenger seat, using towels to pad and cover the wounds. End quote. What am I going to call you, huh? End quote. He murmured, stroking the dog and number 39's head. End quote. You and number 39, or a warrior. You fought until the end. End quote. The Labrador opened its eyes and looked at Zika. There was something in that look the trucker recognized. Absolute gratitude. Okay, warrior. That and number 39's. Your name now. Tell me in the comments where you and number 39 watching from, and take the opportunity to leave a like. Zika started the truck and got back on the road, but this time he was in hash 39, alone, and for the first time in years, he felt he was on the right track. The GPS on his phone indicated the nearest 24-hour veterinary clinic 47 kilometers away. Zika slammed on the accelerator, ignoring the speed limit. Every second could mean the difference between death. Warrior lay in the passenger seat, wrapped in Zika and number 39's shirt. The animal and number 39's breathing was growing weaker and more irregular. Every now and then, the dog opened his eyes and looked at Zika as if to make sure he was in hash 39, dreaming. And, quote, hang in there, boy, end quote. Zika said over and over, his voice trembling. And, quote, we and number 39, LL, get there soon. Everything will be fine, end quote. But deep down, Zika was in hash 39, sure. The injuries were extensive. The amount of blood the animal had lost was frightening. The back legs were raw, and Zika suspected there might be fractures. The truck sliced through the night like a bullet. Zika had turned off the speed limiter, something that could cost him his driver and number 39's license if he were caught, but he didn't. And hash 39. Care. Nothing mattered but saving that dog. His mind constantly returned to the scene on the asphalt, the bald man and number 39's coldness, the contempt in his voice when he called the warrior a worthless mutt, the ease with which he decided to kill a living being over something as small as 2 dead chickens. And, quote, how can people like that exist? End quote, he muttered, gripping the steering wheel. The warrior shook his head as if trying to respond. Zika reached out his right hand and stroked the animal and number 39's nose. It was too cold. And, quote, no, you and number 39. Not gonna die, you hear? Not after everything you and number 39 been through. End quote. The rain had stopped, but the asphalt still glistened with scorch marks. Zika overtook 3 cars in a dangerous maneuver, ignoring the honking protests. His only concern was getting there on time. End quote. "You know what, warrior?" End quote, he said, maintaining a one-sided conversation so as not to let the animal fall asleep. "It number 39's. Been a long time since I felt this urge to save someone." "How long?" Zika tried to remember. 5 years? 6. Ever since Marcia left with her children, his life had been reduced to the road. Cargo, freight, sleeping, the same days repeating themselves endlessly. She said I was cold, and didn't, and #39, show any emotion. He looked at Guerrero. Maybe she was right. Maybe I and number 39 forgotten how to feel. But now, with that injured dog by his side, something had awakened an urgency, a purpose he hadn't, and #39 felt in years, as if all the love he and number 39 kept inside suddenly found a channel. The GPS indicated 23 kilometers. Guerrero groaned softly. Zika looked and saw that the animal had closed its eyes again. Panic gripped the trucker, and, quote, "Hey, Dawn and number 39, close your eyes," and, quote, he shook the animal gently. "Stay awake with me. Talk to me." Guerrero opened his eyes with effort. Zika saw that his pupils were dilated, a sign of shock, and, quote, "That and number 39. It. Look at me. I and number 39. Not handsome, but hang in there." End quote. He tried to make a joke, but his voice was choked. The truth is, he was terrified. He couldn't and #39 lose Guerrero. Not after everything they and number 39 been through together in those 2 hours. 2 hours felt like a lifetime. End quote. "You know you changed my life, right?" End quote. He continued. End quote. "Before I met you, I was just a bitter guy driving a truck. Now I have a reason." End quote. The speedometer read 110 kilometers per hour. Too dangerous for a wet road, but it wouldn't, and #39 slow down. Guerrero needed him. End quote. "Do you know what revolted me most about that scene?" End quote, he asked. End quote. "It wasn't in #39. Just the cruelty. It was the indifference, as if you didn't, and #39 matter, as if your life were worthless." End quote. Guerrero moved his tail weakly, an almost imperceptible movement that filled Zika with hope. End quote. "But it and number 39's worth it. It and number 39's worth a lot. You fought until the end. Even though you were dragged, even in pain, you didn't and #39 give up." End quote. "That and number 39's courage, warrior." 15 kilometers. Zaka picked up his cell phone and called the veterinary clinic. A female voice answered. "Pet Life Clinic. Good evening. I have an emergency. A badly injured dog. I and number 39. LL be there in 15 minutes. What kind of injury?" "He was dragged on the asphalt. He and number 39's losing a lot of blood. His back legs are raw." Silence on the other end. Then, "My God. Okay, Dr. Marcos is here. We and number 39. LL, get everything ready. How are you going to pay?" "How am I going to pay?" Zika almost shouted. And quote, "Miss, I and number 39. LL pay by card, cash, check, and I and number 39. LL sell the truck if necessary. Just get everything ready to save this dog." Okay. We and number 39. LL be waiting." End quote. Zika hung up and looked at Guerrero. The animal stared at him with those brown eyes full of trust, as if knowing he was in the right hands. "Did you hear that? The doctor will save you. You and number 39. LL be fine." But Guerrero was getting weaker and weaker, his breathing more irregular. Zika felt tears burning in his eyes, something he hadn't and #39 seen in years. Dawn and number 39. Die. Warrior, please Dawn and number 39, die. "I need you." The sentence came out before he could think. I need you. When was the last time he said that to someone? When was the last time he truly needed someone? 10 kilometers. Zika accelerated, pushing the limit of what was safe. In the rearview mirror, he saw the first signs of dawn on the horizon. A new day dawning. It had to be a sign of hope. "Look there, warrior. The sun is rising. It will be a new day for you too. A day without pain, without fear. Warrior tried to lift his head but couldn't and hash 39. Zika extended his hand again, offering his warmth, his presence. The animal pressed its nose against his palm and sighed. A sigh that sounded like gratitude. The lights of the veterinary clinic appeared like a beacon in the darkness. Zika parked in the emergency space and jumped out of the truck before the engine even stopped. 2 employees were already waiting at the door with a stretcher. End quote. "Is that him?" end quote, asked a blonde technician, her eyes wide upon seeing the warrior. End quote. "Please, do something." End quote. Zika carefully carried the warrior to the stretcher. The animal could barely keep his eyes open, but when he realized he was being separated from Zika, he tried to move. End quote. "Calm down, kid. They and number 39. LL help you." End quote. Dr. Marcos, a vet in his 50s, quickly examined the wounds as they ran down the hallway. End quote. "How long was he being dragged?" "I, Don. N number 39. No. When I looked up, it had been a while, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. My God." End quote. The doctor shook his head. End quote. "How could anyone do such a thing?" End quote. They entered the operating room. Zika tried to follow, but was stopped by the technician. End quote. "Sorry, but you and number 39, LL have to wait outside. But he will be fine. Dr. Marcos is the best." End quote. The door closed. Through the small glass window, Zika saw a team of 3 working quickly. The warrior was on the table, unconscious, with an oxygen mask. An IV drip was running into his vein, monitors beeping. Zika leaned against the hallway wall and cried for the first time in years. He cried for the cruelty he had witnessed, for the warrior and number 39's, courage, for his own life wasted in loneliness and bitterness. Tears of anger, sadness, but also for something he hadn't in hash 39 felt in a long time. Hope. Mr. Zika wiped his eyes. It was the receptionist. End quote. "I need some information, name and document." End quote. Jose Carlos Oliveira answered automatically. End quote. "CPF 123. End quote. End quote. "Oh, wait. About the payment. You already said you and number 39 D pay. Dawn and number 39. Worry about that now." End quote. Zika filled out the forms mechanically, his attention focused on the operating room. Through the glass he could see the veterinarians working intensely. Guerrero looked so small on that table. How long will it take? It depends. From the injuries I saw, it could be a long surgery. Long? Zika looked at his watch. 5:30. He should be arriving in Fortaleza to unload. His boss would be furious at the delay. He might even fire him. And you know what? He didn't, and hash 39. Care. He sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair and watched the hustle and bustle of the clinic. Other owners arrived with their pets. Some nervous, others calm, all treating their animals like family. Family. Zika tried to remember the last time he felt part of a family, with Marcia and the children perhaps. But even then there was always a distance, as if he were watching his own life from the outside. Mr. Jose. Dr. Marcos had emerged from surgery still with his gloves bloodied. Zika jumped from the chair. How is he? Stable. We managed to stop the main bleeding, but the doctor hesitated. The injuries are extensive. Several fractures in the hind legs. A deep laceration in the abdomen. He and number 39's lost a lot of blood, but he and number 39 LL live. The next 24 hours are critical. If he makes it through this, he has a chance. Zika felt his legs wobble. End quote. Can I see him? End quote. He and number 39's sedated, but he can. End quote. The recovery room was silent, except for the sound of the monitors. Warrior was lying on a heated bed connected to several machines. Bandages covered almost his entire body, but he was breathing. End quote. Hey, Warrior. End quote. Zika whispered, approaching. End quote. Did you make it? You and number 39. This far. End quote. He gently touched the animal and number 39's head. Warrior didn't, and hash 39 move, but Ika swore his breathing had calmed down. End quote. I and number 39. Staying here. I and number 39. Not leaving. Do you hear me? End quote. Dr. Marcos approached. End quote. Are you related to the person who did this to him? No, I only saw it happening on the road. I couldn't and hash 39. Let him. End quote. The vet looked at Zika with respect. End quote. You saved his life for another 5 minutes, and it would have been too late. Anyone would have done the same thing. You would have been surprised. Many people would have passed by. End quote. Zika remained silent. Was it true? Was he different from most people? Or had he simply rediscovered a part of himself he thought he and number 39 lost? End quote. Doctor, how much will all this cost? End quote. Look, it and number 39, going to be expensive. Emergency surgery, medication, and hospitalization, about 5,000 Brazilian reals. 5,000 Brazilian reals, the equivalent of 2 freights. Zika had 3,000 Brazilian reals in savings and would have to go into debt. End quote. Okay, do whatever it takes. Are you sure? It and number 39's a lot of money. End quote. Zika looked at the small, fragile warrior on the bed. He thought of the pleading look the animal had given him on the asphalt, with absolute trust as it nuzzled his hand. End quote. Doctor, this dog trusts me. How can I disappoint him? End quote. Dr. Marcos smiled. End quote. You know what? In 25 years of practice, I and number 39, seen a lot, but people like you are rare. I and number 39, nothing special. You saved the life of an animal you didn't, and hash 39, even no. You and number 39, going to spend 5,000 Brazilian reals you might not have, and you still say you and number 39, not special. End quote. Zika didn't and hash 39, answer. He turned his attention to Warrior, and the next few hours he would know if his decision had been right. For the first time in a long time he prayed. He wasn't an hash 39. Sure how. He hadn't an hash 39. Spoken to God in a long time, but he prayed. He prayed for that brave dog to have another chance. A chance to live, a chance to be happy, a chance to teach Zika how to feel again. It was 6 a.m. and Zika hadn't and hash 39 slept a wink. Sitting in a chair next to Guerrero and number 39's bed, he watched every movement on the monitors, every breath the animal took. The clinic had awakened with the morning rush. Other veterinarians were arriving, employees starting their shift. His cell phone rang. It was Toninho, the company dispatcher. Zika, where the hell are you? The client is calling here in despair. Where are number 39's, the shipment? Zika looked at Guerrero before answering. End quote. I had an unexpected incident. Toninho, an unexpected incident? What kind of unexpected incident? A personal problem. A personal problem, Zika? You have a contract. Can and number 39. You just disappear with a truckload of medicine? End quote. Toninho and number 39's voice echoed through the silent hallway. Zika left the room so as not to disturb Guerrero. End quote. I know, man, but this ISN and hash 39, something that could wait. Look, Mr. Raimundo is furious. He wants you to deliver the shipment by noon or it, and number 39's considered a breach of contract. End quote. Breach of contract means dismissal, means losing the only job he and number 39's known for 20 years. Zika looked through the recovery room door. Guerrero remained motionless, the machines monitoring his every heartbeat. End quote. Okay, Toninho. I and number 39. LL. Take care of it. Get it done, man. Your situation is already complicated. End quote. He hung up his phone and returned to Guerrero. Dr. Marcos came in to check his vital signs. End quote. How is he? End quote. His vital signs are stabilizing. That and number 39's a good sign. The vet adjusted the IV, but it and number 39's still early. His body has been through a lot of trauma. End quote. Doctor, I need to go out for a few hours to deal with the work situation, but I and number 39, LL, be back. Of course, leave me a contact number. If there and number 39's any change, I and number 39, LL call you. End quote. Zika hesitated. Leaving now felt like a betrayal. Guerrero had trusted him. How could he abandon him at a time like this? But if he lost his job, how would he pay for the treatment? He leaned over the bed and gently touched Guerrero and number 39's ear. End quote. Hey kid, I need to go out for a bit, but I and number 39, LL, be back. I promise, I and number 39, LL, be back, end quote. Guerrero didn't, and hash 39, move, but Zika swore the heartbeat on the monitor accelerated, as if the animal felt abandoned again. End quote. No, that and number 39's, not it. I and number 39, never abandoning you. I and number 39, just gonna take care of something and come back to be with you. End quote. He kissed the animal and number 39's forehead and left the clinic with a heavy heart. The trip to Fortaleza was torment. With every kilometer, Zeka thought about Guerrero alone in the clinic. What if something happened while he was away? What if the animal woke up and found no one? The cell phone rang 3 times. Zeka answered on the first ring each time, thinking it was the clinic, but it was just Tonino checking the delivery status. He arrived at his destination at 11:30, half an hour before the deadline. The person in charge of receiving the shipment was visibly irritated. End quote. What and number 39's? Up, Zika? This medication was supposed to arrive last night. Sorry, Mr. Joao. I had an emergency. My ass and number 39's, an emergency. This is unprofessional. End quote. Zika swallowed his anger. He needed to finish quickly so he could get back to Guerrero. He helped unload the boxes quickly, even though it was an hash 39. His job. When he finished, he picked up his cell phone and called the clinic. End quote. Good morning, Pet Life. Hi, it number 39's, Zika. I wanted to know how Guerrero is doing. Oh, the dog you brought? Let me see. Dr. Marcos said he woke up a little while ago and was restless, looking for someone. End quote. Zika and number 39's heart raced. End quote. Looking for someone? End quote. End quote. Yeah. End quote. He sort of lifted his head and stared at the door as if expecting someone. End quote. I and number 39. LL be right there. Tell him I and number 39 coming back. End quote. But tell him. End quote. The receptionist laughed. End quote. Do you think he understands? I think so. Just tell him, please. End quote. Zeka hung up and ran to the truck. Guerrero had woken up. He was looking for him. That meant he was better, but also that he felt abandoned. The trip back was even more excruciating than the one going there. Zika drove at the speed limit, cursing at every slow car in front of him. His cell phone rang again. End quote. Tonino Zika. Mr. Raimundo wants to talk to you. Get here to the company now. I can and number 39. Tonino. What do you mean? And hash 39. I can and number 39. And hash 39. The man is pissed off. Either you come now or you and number 39. Done. End quote. Zika looked at his watch. 1:30 p.m. If he were going to the company, he wouldn't, and hash 39, be at the clinic until late afternoon. End quote. Tonino, I, and number 39. LL, be honest with you. I found a nearly dead dog on the road. I saved him and took him to the vet. He and number 39's in the hospital, almost dying. End quote. Silence on the other end. End quote. And then you and number 39. Kidding me, right? I and number 39, not kidding. It and number 39's true. Zika, you delayed a delivery because of a stray dog. A stray dog. The same word the attacker had used. End quote. Zika felt his anger rise. End quote. He and number 39's, not a stray dog. He and number 39's, a warrior. And he and number 39's, not just anyone. He and number 39's, my responsibility. Now, man, you and number 39 crazy. He and number 39's, just a dog? He and number 39's, not just a dog, end quote, Zika shouted. End quote, he and number 39's, a living being who almost died, and trust me. I won and number 39's, abandon him, end quote, Zika listens, come to the company, we and number 39, LL talk. Maybe we can work around it. There and number 39's, no time, I need to get back to the clinic. If you Don and number 39, come now, you and number 39, LL be fired. Zika pulled the truck over to the side of the road. 20 years at the company, 20 years building a career. He and number 39, lose it all for a dog he and number 39, known for less than 12 hours. He looked in the rearview mirror and saw himself. Eyes red with fatigue, stubble, and messy hair. He looked like a man who, at number 39, lost his mind. Maybe he had. But for the first time in years, he felt he was doing the right thing. Tonino tells Raimundo, and quote, "I and number 39 am sorry, but there are more important things than work," end quote. Zika tells him I and number 39, LL, drop the truck off at the company tomorrow with a full tank of gas. He turned off his cell phone and got back on the road. For the first time in his adult life, he was unemployed, with no income, no prospects, and feeling more alive than ever. When Zika arrived at the clinic, it was 3:20 p.m. He ran through the hallways to the recovery room, and what he saw left him breathless. Guerrero was awake. The animal lifted its head as soon as Zika entered. His brown eyes shone with recognition, and for the first time since they and number 39 met, Guerrero tried to wag his tail. End quote. "Hey, champ!" End quote, Zika whispered, approaching slowly. End quote. "You and number 39, awake." End quote. Guerrero tried to get up, but the bandages and his weakened state prevented it. Even so, he craned his neck towards Zika, as if to make sure he was real. Zika held out his hand. Guerrero sniffed and then rested his nose against his palm, just as he had on the wet asphalt earlier that morning. End quote. "Sorry I took so long. I had to take care of something." End quote. Dr. Marcos entered the room with a smile on his face. He woke up 2 hours ago and stared at the door the whole time. When he heard his footsteps in the hallway, he immediately lifted his head. He recognized me. Definitely. Dogs have an impressive memory for people who save them. He knows you and number 39. His now. His. The word echoed in Zika and number 39's mind. How long has it been since someone was his? How long has it been since he was someone and number 39's? How are the wounds? Better than we expected. The surgery was successful. We were able to reconstruct most of the damage to his paws. He and number 39, LL, have some scars, maybe a slight limp, but nothing that will prevent him from living a normal life. A normal life. Guerrero would have a normal life. Zika felt such relief that he had to sit down. When can he be discharged? If all goes well, in a week. But he and number 39, LL, need medication, healing, and physical therapy. I and number 39, LL, take care of him. Dr. Marcos looked at Zika curiously. End quote. "Do you have experience with dogs?" End quote. End quote. "No, but I and number 39, LL, learn. It and number 39's a big responsibility, especially with an animal that and number 39's been through trauma. He and number 39, LL, need a lot of love. Patience." End quote. Dr. Zika interrupted. End quote. "This dog saved me as much as I saved him. I and number 39, LL, give him everything he needs." End quote. Guerrero had closed his eyes but kept his head resting on Zika and number 39's hand. He was breathing calmly for the first time since they met. End quote. "Can I keep him today?" "Of course, but you can. And number 39, feed him yet?" End quote. "His stomach is still tender." Zika pulled the chair closer to the bed and settled in. Guerrero opened his eyes and looked at him with an expression Zika had never seen in any animal. Pure love. "You know something, Guerrero? I lost my job today." The animal tilted its head as if listening. 20 years working at the same company, but I chose to be with you instead of going to a meeting. Zika chuckled softly. "My ex-wife always said I didn't, and #39 know how to prioritize. I think she and number 39 changed her mind today." Guerrero wagged his tail weakly. "You know what? And number 39's funny? I and number 39 unemployed. You and number 39 going to spend a fortune on your treatment. I, Don, and number 39 know how I and number 39 going to support you. I feel better than I have in years." Zika and number 39's cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello, is this Jose Carlos? This is Chief Martins from the Calcaya police station. I received a report of animal abuse. Your name appeared as a witness." Zika and number 39's heart raced. Report. A man named Antonio Ferreira said he was assaulted and threatened by a truck driver who stole his dog. Did this bastard have the courage to press charges? Can you come here and explain yourself? Zika looked at Guerrero, end quote. Officer, I have everything filmed. The animal being dragged, the injuries. Do you want me to come over there now? If possible, I and number 39, LL, send the video via WhatsApp now and come back tomorrow with the veterinary report. Perfect. From what you told me, the situation might change, end quote. After he hung up, Zika stared at Guerrero, end quote. Did you hear that? The monster who did this to you will pay, end quote. Guerrero seemed to understand. His eyes shone with surprising intelligence. End quote. You know you changed my life, right, Zika? End quote. He continued. End quote. Before I met you, I just existed. I got up, worked, slept, felt nothing, didn't, and #39'd care about anything, end quote. He stroked Guerrero and number 39's intact ear. Now I have something to fight for. Someone who needs me. Do you know how long it and number 39's been since anyone needed me? Guerrero moved his front paw and touched Zika and number 39's hand. A small gesture, but it meant the world to the truck driver. Marcia always said I was selfish and only thought of myself. Maybe she was right. But with you, it and number 39's different. Your happiness is more important than mine. The sun was beginning to set outside. Nurses came and went, checking on other hospitalized animals. The normal routine of a veterinary clinic, but for Zika, that room was the center of the universe. End quote. Do you know what we and number 39 are going to do when you get out of here? End quote, he asked. End quote. We and number 39, LL, find a little place of our own, a little house with a yard. You and number 39, LL, be able to run and play. End quote. Guerrero stared at him intently, as if he understood every word. End quote. And I and number 39, LL, teach you that not everyone is like that monster, that there are good people in the world, people who will love you the way you deserve. End quote. Dr. Marcos appeared in the doorway. How is he? Much better, smarter than I imagined. Dogs who have experienced trauma sometimes become even more attached to their savior. It and number 39's, a very special bond. Zeka looked at Guerrero, who hadn't in #39, taken his eyes off him, and quote, Doctor, can I sleep here tonight? Well, it and number 39's, not protocol please. He and number 39's, been through so much. I, Don and number 39, want him to feel abandoned again, end quote. Dr. Marcos watched the scene, man and dog looking at each other with mutual love. End quote. Okay, but only today. Thank you. End quote. When they were alone again, Zika settled more comfortably in the chair. Guerrero sighed and closed his eyes, keeping his paw touching his savior and number 39's hand. For the first time in years, Zika fell asleep with a smile on his face. A week later, Guerrero was discharged. His wounds were healing well, and although he still had a limp on his left hind leg, the vet assured him it was temporary. Zika had used the last few days to organize his life. He sold his car and some belongings to pay for the treatment. He rented a small apartment with a backyard in Maracanã near the clinic and bought everything a dog could need: a bed, a food bowl, toys, and a leash. End quote. Guerrero, we, and number 39, Hero, end quote. The apartment was simple, 2 bedrooms with a small living room and an open-plan kitchen, but the backyard was spacious with grass and a mango tree for shade. Guerrero explored every corner curiously, sniffing everything, marking his territory. When he reached the backyard, he stopped and looked at Zika as if to ask, Is this all ours? Yes, it and number 39's. Ours. Your home. For the first time since his rescue, Guerrero ran, still limping, but he ran in circles around the yard, his tongue wagging with joy. Zika laughed until tears flowed. And, quote, that and number 39's, it. Run, boy, you and number 39. Free, end quote. At night, while preparing dinner, something simple, Zika felt Guerrero always nearby. The animal didn't, and #39, moved more than 2 meters away from him as if afraid his rescuer would disappear. End quote. Relax, Guerrero. I and number 39, not going anywhere, end quote. But he knew it would take time. Doctor? Marcos had warned about the potential psychological trauma. Abused dogs develop separation anxiety and fear of abandonment. The phone rang. It was to Nino. Zika, man, Mr. Raimundo changed his mind. Do you want me to come back? Changed your mind. He saw the video of the dog that went viral online, man. Over 1 million views. Everyone speaking highly of you. Zika was confused. What video? The one you filmed of the guy dragging the animal. Someone leaked it. Now the bastard is being lynched online. He lost his job. His wife left him. And what does that have to do with me? Going back to work. Mr. Raimundo wants to capitalize on the good publicity. A company that employs animal heroes, that sort of thing. Zika looked at the warrior sleeping on the living room rug. I, Don, and number 39. Want to go back to Nino? What do you mean, you, Don, and number 39, want to? It and number 39's, your job of 20 years. Exactly. 20 years doing the same thing on autopilot. Now, I have something more important. Zika, you can, and number 39, make a living taking care of dogs. I can try. Actually, Zika had a plan. In the last few days, several people had contacted him, offering donations for Guerrero and number 39's treatment. Some companies wanted to sponsor his story. A publisher even suggested a book. Tonino, thanks for the call, but my answer is no. He hung up and sat on the floor next to Guerrero. The animal opened his eyes and came to rest his head in Zika and number 39's lap. End quote. You know what? For the first time in my life, I know exactly what I want to do. End quote. Guerrero wagged his tail. End quote. I want to help other animals like you. Set up a shelter. Do rescues. I, Don, and number 39. Know how yet, but I and number 39. LL find out. End quote. In the following days, Zika began researching animal protection. He discovered NGOs, rescue groups, and protection laws. He contacted other protectors and volunteered. The first time he took Guerrero to a shelter, he was shocked. Dozens of abandoned dogs were injured, traumatized, and endlessly repeated. End quote. Is it like this everywhere? End quote. Ask the shelter owner Maria, a 60-year-old woman who dedicated her life to animals. Every day, more dogs arrive, and resources are always lacking. Zika looked at Guerrero playing with other dogs in the shelter and number 39's yard. Within a week, his pet had transformed. The haunted look gave way to joy. Fear was replaced by trust. End quote. Donna Maria, I really want to help with donations. I, Don, and number 39, want to work here and be a part of this. End quote. The woman studied him carefully. End quote. Do you have experience? I, Don, and number 39, have experience, but I have motivation and time. We, Don, and number 39, pay salaries. I, Don, and number 39, need a salary. I need a purpose. End quote. Donna Maria smiled. End quote. When can you start? End quote. Tomorrow. That night, Zika and Guerrero walked around the neighborhood. It was impressive how people reacted upon seeing the animal. Children came to pet them. Adults asked about the story. The rescue video had truly gone viral. You became a celebrity warrior. But what drew most attention was #39. His fame, it was Zika and number 39's transformation. Neighbors commented on how much happier and lighter he seemed, as if he and number 39 found his place in the world. Back at the apartment, while the warrior slept in his new bed, Zika reflected on everything that had changed. 3 weeks ago, he was just a lonely truck driver. Now he was a volunteer animal protector at a shelter. And most importantly, he was a father. Father to a courageous Labrador who had taught him the true meaning of unconditional love. He picked up his cell phone and called a number he hadn't and #39. Dialed in months. Marcia, it and number 39's, Zika. Zika, what a surprise. How are you? Very, very well. I wanted to tell you something. He told me the whole story. The rescue, the decision to quit his job, the new life with Guerrero. Marcia listened in silence. End quote. Have you changed? End quote, she said at the end. End quote. I have. End quote. Your voice is different, more lively. End quote. I think I finally discovered who I am. I am number 39. Truly happy for you, Zika. End quote. When he hung up, Guerrero was awake, watching him from the bed. End quote. Hey kid, can and number 39 sleep? End quote. Guerrero got up and came to lie at Zika and number 39's feet. End quote. Thank you. End quote. Zika whispered, stroking the animal and number 39's head. End quote. Thank you for saving me. End quote. Guerrero sighed and closed his eyes. For the first time since they met, they both slept through the night without nightmares. 6 months later, the San Francisco shelter had been transformed. With Zika and number 39's help and the popularity of Guerrero and number 39's story, they were able to renovate the facilities, build new stalls, and implement a responsible adoption program. Zika had discovered a natural talent for dealing with traumatized animals. His infinite patience and personal experience with emotional pain created a special connection with the most difficult animals. End quote. Look who and number 39's here, end quote, said Dona Maria as Zika arrived for another day of work. On her desk were dozens of letters asking for help from all over Brazil, people who had seen the video and wanted to donate, adopt, or simply share their own rescue stories. End quote. More are arriving every day, end quote, she continued. End quote. I think you need to think big, Zika. Think big, end quote. Zika looked around the shelter and number 39's courtyard. Guerrero was playing with the newly arrived dogs, helping to socialize the shyer ones. It was incredible how the animal had become a kind of canine therapist. Donna Maria had an idea. Tell me, what if we did a TV show? Nothing sensationalist, but something educational, showing how to properly care for animals, how to identify abuse, and stories of overcoming obstacles. You on TV? She laughed. A truck driver becoming a presenter. Why not? Who better than someone who, and number 39, been through it? That afternoon, Zika called a producer he and number 39 contacted weeks earlier. The idea immediately excited them. The producer suggested, end quote, four-legged warriors, end quote, a weekly half-hour show showcasing real rescues, care tips, and inspiring stories. And Guerrero would participate, of course. He and number 39, D, be the co-host. Zika looked at his partner who was lying in the sun in the backyard, and quote, what do you think, kid? Do you want to be an artist? End quote. Guerrero wagged his tail as if approving of the idea. 3 months later, the show and number 39's pilot aired. The response was immediate and positive. Emails from all over the country poured in telling similar stories, asking for help and offering support. But what touched Zika most was a specific call. His father was Juliana, his youngest daughter, 16, who had barely spoken to him since their separation. And quote, Ju, how are you, daughter? I watched your show and cried the whole time. End quote. Zika felt his throat tighten. He wept with emotion. End quote. I, and number 39, never seen you so genuine. Juliana, I want to meet Guerrero. Can I come over this weekend? Of course you can. End quote. On Saturday, Juliana arrived with her mother. Marcia was visibly curious to see the changes she had noticed in her ex-husband and number 39's voice. End quote. Wow. End quote. Was Juliana and number 39's first word upon seeing Guerrero. End quote. He and number 39's beautiful. End quote. Guerrero, always sociable, went straight to the girl. Within minutes, they were playing in the backyard like old friends. Does he like everyone like that? Marcia asked. End quote. Only those with a good heart, end quote. Zika replied. End quote. He knows how to recognize special people, end quote. Marcia observed her ex-husband. End quote. You really are different. But what else? More human, end quote. That afternoon, they visited the shelter. Juliana was delighted with her father and number 39's work. Marcia, visibly moved, insisted on making a generous donation. End quote. Dad, can I volunteer during the holidays? End quote. Juliana asked. End quote. Yes, but it, and number 39, LL be hard work. It doesn't, and hash 39, matter. I want to help. End quote. When they left, Zika sat in the yard with Guerrero. The animal came to lay its head in his lap, as it did every night. End quote. You know something? End quote. Zika asked, looking at the stars. End quote. That morning, when I saw you being dragged away, I thought I was saving you. but now I know the truth, end quote. Guerrero looked up at him, end quote. You saved me, taught me there was still good in me, showed me it and number 39's, never too late to start over, end quote. The phone rang. It was Marcos. Zika, I just saw your show. Fantastic. Thank you, doctor. But I called for another reason. A serious case has arrived here, end quote. A German Shepherd puppy was beaten by its owner. It and number 39's, badly injured, but mostly traumatized. It won, and number 39, let anyone near it. I and number 39, going over there now. Zika is the same as the warrior, maybe worse. Zika looked at his companion. End quote. We and number 39 are going, right, warrior? There and number 39's, another warrior who needs us, end quote. At the clinic, the puppy was hiding at the back of the cage, trembling. When it saw strangers, it growled and curled up even more, end quote. Calm down, Zika, end quote. It said softly, crouching down, end quote. No one and number 39, going to hurt you, end quote. Warrior approached the cage, sniffed the air, and lay down in front of the door, not trying to enter, just offering company. The puppy stopped growling, its eyes fixed on Warrior, perhaps recognizing one like it, someone who had gone through the same pain. Slowly, very slowly, the puppy approached the bars. Warrior remained motionless, radiating calm, and quote, impressive, end quote. Dr. Marcos murmured. It and number 39's, as if they understood each other, end quote. They do, end quote, Zika said. End quote. Pain recognizes pain, but it also recognizes healing, end quote. 2 hours later, they managed to get the cub out of the cage. He accepted Zika and number 39's, embrace, but never took his warrior eyes off him, end quote. Welcome to the family, hero, end quote, Zika said, naming the new member. On the way home, Zika reflected on his journey. From lonely truck driver to animal protector, from a closed-off man to a TV presenter, from an absent father to a present father. All because one night on a wet road, he decided not to pass by. End quote. Thank you, end quote. He whispered to the warrior sleeping in the back seat with the hero curled up beside him. End quote. Thank you for teaching me that saving someone is the best way to save yourself. End quote. The warrior opened one eye, shook his butt once, and went back to sleep, as if to say, end quote. Go ahead, end quote. It was just the beginning, and it truly was, because now Zika knew his mission in life. Every animal rescued, every story shared, every person inspired to make a difference. The road was still there, but now, instead of running away from life, Zika was traveling it, saving lives. And Guerrero, his faithful co-pilot, accompanied him every mile of this new journey. A journey that began with pain and transformed into a purpose that was born in darkness and blossomed in light. A journey that proved that sometimes, to find our true destiny, we just need to have the courage to stop and help someone in need. Thank you for making it this far, but Don and number 39, leave yet. On the screen opposite, there and number 39's, another moving story. Click subscribe to the channel and share. I and number 39, LLC there, M.